Welcome to a Faithful God podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Rotzel, and today on the show, my guest, Allie, is joining us to talk about what happens when God says no. So grab those earbuds and your favorite beverage and join me for today's show. Well, hey, friend, how are you? Welcome back to the show. Listen, I have got a great show for you today. My guest, Allie Horan, who actually is one of my students. She has gone through the Confident Prayer Warrior program. She is also a member of the Grow Your Faith community, both programs that we have inside Footprints of Inspiration and a Faithful God podcast. And Allie, I've gotten to know Allie very well over this past year and a half. I can't remember how long we've known each other. I don't know if we ever came up with that. We talk about it in the episode, but I don't know if we ever just came up with how long we've known each other. But we've known each other for a while now, and I have seen Allie, golly day, I've seen Allie grow, like really step outside her comfort zone to step into the life God has for her. She is one who is, what I absolutely love about her, she is raw and honest. She isn't afraid to be vulnerable, and is learning not to be afraid to be vulnerable or to step outside anyway, even when she is feeling a little bit fearful and such, and just really step into the life that God has for her. And Allie actually has a beautiful testimony of what happens when God says no. And she's going to share throughout this episode just, golly day, the hard times that she went through, the pain. She's going to be very raw and very honest with us about her feelings towards God at this time when he said no for something that she was praying. She's going to talk about how honestly it was like ripping her heart out, and him saying no to this prayer request that she had. But she's also going to share just the beauty that comes when God says no, that he isn't just saying no and walking away from us, that he's actually saying no because I've got something really special planned for you. So listen, here's the thing. Every one of us has experienced a no. Every one of us will experience a no from God again in our lives. So whether you're going through that right now, or we know it will happen in the future, be sure to listen to this week's show, and also bookmark it so you can go back to it when that time comes, because it will come, my friend. So listen, I'm not going to make you wait any longer. On with my conversation with Allie. Well, hey, Allie, how are you, my friend? Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. All the way from England.
Yes, exactly. From across the pond from me, for sure. So listen, I always like our listeners to know, just how you and I know each other and how we've met and how all of this came to be. So you and I actually have known each other for over a year now, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so you are one of my students. You have gone through the Confident Prayer Warrior program, and you are also a member of the Grow Your Faith community. And so you and I have talked a lot through there and really gotten to know each other through there, which has been such a treat. And so it's so cool that technology allows us to really connect, from all over the world. And I absolutely love how God just brings us together. And we're actually going to talk about this in just a little bit, but it's just so cool to see how God brings us together. And, golly day, who would have thought that, right? Someone from the United States and over in England, and here we are getting so close and really enjoying each other's company, and just being very grateful to have, I know I'm very grateful to have you in my life and in the community and such. But if you will, tell us just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump into questions, or we'll jump into our conversation.
Okay, so I'm over here in England, and I've got two children and a husband. They're both my children are grown up, and my daughter and son-in-law and three grandchildren now all live in America, in Western New York State, just south of Buffalo. And they're on mission work at the moment.
Mhm.
And yeah, so that's kind of the connection with America.
Yeah.
I've been a Christian a long time, over 20 years now. But until recently, I'd been sort of, not really, I hadn't read the Bible for quite a long time, and I just kind of, I was a Christian, but it was just kind of on the back burner, really. I wasn't really pursuing God. That's
Mhm.
where I was at, and I was kind of, yeah, I guess I was just sort of, at that point, I wasn't even angry or anything with him. It was just, yeah, I was quite, yes, I believe in God, and yes, I'm a Christian, and yes, I go to church, but I wasn't really taking my own personal journey very seriously at all, really.
Yeah.
And yeah, most of my friends here are not Christians, so that was, made it more difficult, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. So
Yeah. And I love that I love how you said it, Allie, you weren't really pursuing God, because I think most of us can relate to that. Or I know me specifically can, I've known God all my life. I considered myself a Christian. I've loved him all my life. But same thing. I didn't really pursue him. It was like for me, and I think we found for you as well, which we'll get into, but for me, it was, I had to hit rock bottom to that whole saying, you don't know God is all you need until God is all you have. And I truly experienced and lived that. And it's so interesting because I think your story, though our stories are very, very different. They are two totally different things. But I think we can all relate to, yeah, you don't know that God is all you need until he really is all you have. And you don't know just the plans that he has for us, when we're seeing this very itty bitty perspective, this tiny little perspective, and he's just like, goodness gracious, yeah, I've got so much more for you. So today we're going to talk about, you know, we're going to talk about when God says no. And I really want to thank you so much for being vulnerable enough to come on the show. You actually, which is what I talked about this in the intro, but you actually were so at the end of the Confident Prayer Warrior program, we do a celebration of such, and you actually were willing to and volunteered actually to come on and talk to us about when God says no. And this is something we're all going to experience in our lives. We've all experienced it, and we will all experience it again in our lives. And it's such a beautiful testimony, and I love how honest and raw you are with it. So I really want to get into that. So Allie, if you'll share with us, what was your prayer request and the situation that you were praying for when God said no to you?
So a few years back now, before we had any grandchildren, my daughter and son-in-law were living a couple of hours away from us, and they'd got to know an American couple through the course that they were doing. My daughter was doing a degree
Mm-hmm.
in theology, but they were both part of a ministry where they were living, where this American couple would come over every year and give seminars and whatnot.
Okay.
It was them that suggested that maybe Jodie and Joel could go and live in America and do some work over there. And of course, at the time I was like, oh no, I don't want that to happen. So, and then they didn't actually go straight away. They were praying about it. Then they had our first grandchild. They were living with us. And if we fast forwarded a little bit, they went to America the first time in 2019, but up until that point, I'd been praying that they wouldn't go. Our grandson was about 18 months old at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and they all went. So we'd all lived together, and they went. And at that point, I really didn't know what God was doing. You know, I prayed, please, you know, not for them to not go, because there are millions of people in America. Surely there must be some Americans that
Yeah.
go and work at this church. They were in Florida the first time they went. And yeah, so it was very, very difficult, dark time for me, because, you know, God had said no, basically. You know, and at that time, I really did feel, well, he doesn't love me, he doesn't care about me, he hasn't listened to my prayer, he hasn't answered it, and he's now ripped my family. Not just, they weren't just living around the corner, we were all actually living together, and you
Yeah.
know, and now on, and he's done that. And so there was a lot of resentment, not just at God, but also at even at the American couple that are absolutely lovely,
Sure.
even at them, because they put the idea in their head. That's where my thinking was at, you know, and
Yeah.
God has just not listened to me. So
Yeah.
yeah, kind of where I was at.
You know, and again, I love how honest you are about this, because I think we can all relate. We feel like if we're feeling this way, we must not be a good Christian. We must not, be a good Bible study girl. But the truth is, we are going to have these disappointments. We are going to, I mean, be angry and mad. And, so many of my listeners know, my story, and I laid in bed for years yelling at God, mad at God, turning my back to God, because why would he allow this to happen? And the same thing with you. You have your family living with you. You've been praying against it. And, so much of scripture teaches us, and what is it? When you ask according to my will, I will, you will get what you want. Anyway, I'm totally massacring the verses, but yeah, all you have to do is pray and God's going to give you what you want. And here he is saying no, and not just a easy no, but let me rip out your heart. Like, as a fellow mom, Lord have mercy. Let me I'm not, I'm taking them out of your household, out of, and clear across the pond. So not even an hour or 2 hours drive from you, but plane rides. And yeah, so I just really appreciate your vulnerability and just how honest you are about it, because that's reality. That's really the way life is, and that's how things happen. Unfortunately, is that sometimes God says no. And so tell me, like, throughout this, and I'm kind of looking at my notes, forgive me for just a moment, but um, what were some of the ways that you saw God's presence and provision in the midst of his disappointment? And I would assume, or excuse me, in the midst of his no, but I would assume you didn't experience these immediately. This took some time, but how did you see God working in this? And how long before you saw God working in this, or saw what God was doing in this? Does that make sense?
Yes. So basically, I didn't. It took a long time, because they were in
Yeah.
America the first time for 10 months. They actually came home in 2020, just as COVID. They came home because COVID
Oh,
was.
right. Right.
My daughter was pregnant at that point with our second grandson, and they came home. They came home to live with us, and I was so in the 10 months that they were there. I didn't pursue God. I just even more so probably turned my back even more, because they were over there. We did go over and visit them
Mhm.
um, in Florida, and it was lovely, but it was hard. It was hard every time we were leaving, and it was harder and harder, and um, so it wasn't really until they went back to America in May of 2022, so almost 2 years ago. That's when things really started to change, because of where they were placed. Basically, they were in a different area, and the people I met, and how God brought certain people into my life. in the most unusual and crazy way. And it's really only because of that. It's only because of what God's done, really, because I wasn't really pursuing him. I was praying they wouldn't go back.
Yeah.
You know, they she was pregnant. I didn't want them to go. Sorry, no, by that point she'd had our second grandson, and again they were all living with us again, all through
Yeah.
COVID. We were living together. So I didn't actually, I hadn't pursued God in the whole time that they were here.
Hmm.
They were watching church online. I wasn't even doing that.
Hmm.
So, I wasn't pursuing him. He pursued me in the end, I think, because he knew what he was going to do. He
Yeah.
knew what was going to happen. He knew who I was going to meet. He knew who he was putting in my path and for what reason. And
Yeah.
I wasn't, if I'm honest, I wasn't actually praying really at
Yeah.
that time. I just didn't want them to go. We
Yeah.
went with them because we knew that this time it would probably be more of a permanent thing. They'd got a house. And we went with them to help them settle in. And I was a mess really that week we were with them, because I just
Mm.
knew it was going to be coming to an end. We were going to have to say goodbye to them again. And I really didn't understand what he was doing. So the long answer to that is I didn't really pursue him. It was him that grabbed hold of me
Hmm.
week when we were there, towards the end of that week, when
Yeah.
we went to church on the Sunday. And ever since then, things have just, well, I think we came home and it was difficult when we came home.
Yeah.
But God was working all the time in the background, and then about 6 months later, things did really change for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
With
Which,
so
yeah, and which I want to get into, but I do have a couple things. So, like, first and foremost, like, did this question, and I've never asked you this question, but did Jody know, your daughter, did she know that you were like, did she know your feelings about it and that you were actually praying, asking God not to take them? I'm just
she
curious.
she would have been aware of that,
Yeah.
but in the beginning,
Yeah.
it was very difficult for her, because obviously she was pursuing God and following God,
Yeah.
and I it wasn't helpful for me to be constantly miserable
Yeah.
around her. So I tried not to. It ended up being a bit of an elephant in the room. We just didn't really talk about it when they were
Yeah.
living. We didn't talk about when they might be going back, and or we joke about it, sort of, oh, Mum, you're not going to like this, we can't go yet. You're going to have us for another couple of months. You'll be pleased about that. It was all kind of, so she knew I
Yeah.
didn't. She wouldn't necessarily have been aware I was actually praying against it. She knows
Yeah.
now, but
Yeah.
might she just knew that I didn't want them to go.
Yeah.
So she was kind of mindful of, I think, not talking too much about it. It was a bit of an uncomfortable subject, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I just, as a mom, like I said, it just, like, my heart just, oh, it just hurts. Like, and my kids, when they went off to school, they were only hours away. And so I can only imagine, like, how difficult this is, and how, yeah, just what a struggle it is. And I can completely relate, like, totally. I would have done, honestly, the same thing. I would have prayed for them not to go. I would have, been, it would have absolutely crushed me inside. And so, and I think we can all, like I said, every single person, every single one of us is going to experience God's no. And not just maybe in the past, but also in the future. We are going to go through life and experience that no. Allie, so how has this experience of God saying no, how has it shaped your perspective on prayer and trusting in his plan? Because actually, even before that, let's table that question for just a moment. So tell us what happened then. They moved over here, you
Mhm.
came over, and tell us a little bit about that, because then
So,
we'll ask that question. Yeah.
we came, as I said, we came with them when they moved in May of 22,
Yeah.
and we went to church one Sunday. We were there, and my son wanted to, I've told this story so many times, but it is important because it's part of it. The beginning, he wanted a cup of coffee, and the church service was about to start, and this lady walked past, could see some conversation going on. Obviously people knew who we were, even though we didn't know anyone. And she just questioned, could she help? And she took him off and got him coffee. And I remember thinking to myself, as she took him away, oh, she's somebody I could be friends with. I don't know why I thought that. It was just such a very, very quick interaction. But she was willing, and she could have walked past, she could have ignored us, but she didn't. So that was the beginning of me. That was the first time I'd spoken to Linda. I didn't know who she was. And obviously subsequently, as the story went on, when the church over there knew that they were going to be coming back, they were all, we must pray for them, they're coming back, we need to pray for them, it's great news, it's blah, blah, blah. But unbeknown to lots of people, Linda was, God had put me on her heart. She didn't know me, she didn't know my name, she didn't know anything about me. All she was doing was thinking how difficult this was going to be for Jodie's mum, so that's kind of the connection there. And also she had been praying for a Christian female friend that she could be real with. So, and yeah, I mean, it's not just God giving me Linda. I think he's given us to each other, kind of this crazy way. And yeah, totally. So that's kind of how it developed. So I came home. I still wasn't really pursuing God when I got home, but I'd have the occasional message with Linda over that 6 months. And then we came back at Christmas of 22, and we'd been messaging a little bit more. And we didn't meet up as much as we'd wanted to when we were there, because there was loads of snow that year. It was awful. But we met. And then since Christmas of 22, we've messaged each other every single day without fail. And we just got to know each other over the next few months. And then I thought, well, this is very nice, having this, it's great having this friend to chat to. But then I asked her if she wanted to do a Bible study. Did you think, how could that work? Could it work and whatnot? So we did a little bit. We started doing that. And then that's how I ended up coming into Grow Your Faith, because she was doing it. Yeah. And the rest So
yeah. So let me just back up for a second. So you came over here, and I remember you telling me at one point, sitting in church, just feeling very disgruntled. Like, I don't want to be here. I'm frustrated. I don't want them here. And then here is this woman that helps your son with coffee, just some strange thing. You all of a sudden, there's something there. The two of you talk a little bit more. You find out she's praying for Jodie's mom because she can only imagine how difficult this is going to be. And lo and behold, this person is Linda, who, which, by the way, for my listeners, is actually part of my team. Linda is my virtual assistant. And so Linda, here she is in this church. The two of you wind up this connection that only God can create, because that is only a God thing. And he's created this connection. And here now you have found, like, the two of you have become best friends, and just like you said, talking every single day, helping each other through things, praying for each other. And then, and then she introduced you into the Grow Your Faith community, which we're so tickled to have you in there. But just to see what God has done. So then that leads into and it's kind of an obvious question, but again, you see God's presence in this, and just kind of speak to that, if you will, a little bit, is how you saw God's presence through this.
So I think when I stop and look now, and I see where I'm at, see where he's brought me to now, it's that it would not have happened.
Yeah.
I guarantee it would not have happened had he said yes to me and they'd stayed here. If
Mhm.
because of what's happened since and how I'm now just so in love with Jesus, and that would not, I can't see that that would have happened if he'd said yes to me. So I see that it's that old cliche, isn't it, where you can only see what's right in front of you, but he sees the whole picture. And it is so true. He's already got it covered, regardless of what we pray. He just wants us, he just wants that relationship with us. And I, yeah, I can honestly say I wouldn't be where I'm at now if they were still living in England. I see so many things that have happened
Yeah.
for the good of God since they've been living there. Even my relationship with my daughter
Yeah.
is 100 times better than it
Oh,
was before. No, I mean, we didn't have a bad relationship, but
of course.
just, we can really connect with each other more now. And that sounds crazy because they live thousands of miles away, and my main worry when they moved there was that that the grandchildren wouldn't know me, they would forget
Yeah.
who I was, and it hasn't happened. That hasn't happened. God hasn't allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
They actually call me now and
Yeah.
want to chat with Nan and whatnot. I read them stories. I send them daft little interactive, I play with their toys basically and film myself. So they've got a video from
What?
from
I didn't know you did that.
yeah, I just do like little crazy stuff like that because I just I didn't want to be an absent grandparent. I wanted to be involved in their lives. So
You're
yeah.
gonna make me cry, Allie. Oh my, like I've never heard of anyone doing that, and that is beautiful.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness.
And
Oh,
it's so cool because she's very good at keeping in contact. And even
yeah.
yesterday, she homeschools them, and we've now got a granddaughter as well who's a few months old, and um, she was trying to finish up doing some schoolwork with the older one, and the younger one needed something to do, so he just phoned me.
Oh,
And and the next thing is that they're coming home on the 5th of May they're coming for a month at least. So I'm busy, trying to make space. And but I've done the boys' room, so I was able to then show him what toys he's got. So
oh,
even even with that distance, that thousands of miles of distance, I was still doing grandparenting stuff. While she finished schoolwork, I was entertaining the other one. And that's the beauty of FaceTime, isn't it? I guess.
yeah,
But you
yeah,
see that not it's I could never ever have imagined that it would be as good as it is. It's like he said no to my prayer request. He said no because he knew what he was going to do. He knew what better thing was coming. And I think the main thing that I've taken from this, the whole thing, is sometimes when we can't see that it's a good thing, like even now, I could honestly say, yeah, it's not ideal. I don't love them living there. I don't
sure.
love it. But it I can honestly say that it is the right thing for them at the moment, and things are better than I could have ever imagined.
Yeah,
And yet at the time it was hard to believe, like how can anything possibly good come from this God? How can anything be good? You've
yeah,
ripped my family away. How can anything be good about that? But here we are. He's answered me like tenfold, like this is how good it can be if you just listen to, just wait and be patient. And
yeah.
that's taught me a lot. I'm not a very patient person, so
Oh,
it's taught me to just, you know, relax, go with the flow, and just
yeah,
wait and watch and listen and learn and see where it takes you.
yeah, yeah. And it really is. And even, having you inside the Grow Your Faith community, I've seen, and I hope this doesn't sound bad, but I mean, I've seen the growth in you just inside the community. I mean, your reliance on God. I mean, I can remember, but if you like when you were flying over here to see them, air travel it is something that you're just not super comfortable with. And you had to navigate flying over here. There were several things that just went on to make your travel over here an absolute, just, it wasn't peaceful at all. There was just like, there were challenges, there was this, there was that, but it was really cool to see, like, as we came together as a community and we're praying for you through that, and just how much God showed up for you. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so last summer I flew on my own. I love flying. Once I'm on the aircraft and we're taking off, I love that part of it. I'm not scared of flying.
Mhm.
But what I do get is a lot of anxiety in the build up, the
Right.
arrival at the airport, going through security, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not just a simple, I fly from London to America. I have to fly into New York and then get a flight to Buffalo. Although we've worked out now it's actually quicker for us to go to Toronto. And so that's
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
last summer I didn't know that. And I flew to New York, did all that, got my case, put that through, went back through security all by myself, and I was fine because people were praying.
Yeah.
And I just sat down, just finished eating a meal, and I got a text message and it went up on the board that my flight to Buffalo was cancelled. So I'm alone, a woman alone in an unfamiliar country, airport, and I don't know what I'm going to do at that point. I don't know how to get my luggage back. I don't know where to go, what to do, or
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
However, I spoke to my daughter, and just by, well, we say by chance,
Hmm.
friends round for lunch that day after church. It was a Sunday, and the guy that was round, he wasn't one of their close friends at the time. They didn't
Right.
see the time, but he's a driver. He's used to driving in New York, and he looked at my son-in-law and said, "Well, it looks like we're going on a road trip." So they drove however many hours it was, 7 hours or something, I can't remember, and came to the airport, picked me up. So they had a 15-hour round trip. I just
Yeah.
had to, lay down
Yeah.
in the back of the car. But yeah, so, and in the midst of that, my son-in-law, Joel, he then had good conversations with the guy that he was spending all this time with,
Yeah.
and everybody was fine. And I got there. I was a few hours late, but yeah,
Yeah.
I got, so.
Yeah. Well, and would you say that all of this through God's no, that you are learning to rely on him more and to trust him more and to just know, even though sometimes it's still uncomfortable, even though sometimes these things come up that make you feel anxious, would you say that you are learning to rely on him more because of this no?
Yes, definitely. I think
Yeah.
what happens now is when, because other things will happen, won't they, in your life, your day-to-day life. But I think when those
Yeah.
things come up now, I'm getting better each time. Rather than going off down that road of worry and being anxious, I'm right. Okay, God, what's going on? Why am I feeling like this? What's
Yes.
happening? And it does happen weekly. I can go down that,
Oh,
why do I feel like this today? What's going on? But I'm learning, rather than let the enemy sit and it build up into a bigger thing.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I'm not there yet. I don't suppose any of us are really. We're all really,
exactly.
but I am getting better at recognizing and going to God quicker with it, I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he doesn't
Yeah.
always answer straight away. But
Yeah.
I think what I've learned recently is that if I go to God and ask the question, what's going on? What do I need to learn through this? What's happening? I'm not going to necessarily get the answer, but a peace comes because I've made that ask
Yeah.
to get a bit of peace because you've communicated with him, and that's all he wants. That's all
Yeah.
he wants. He wants us to communicate, doesn't he? So
Yeah.
he'll do the
Yeah.
rest.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Allie. Well, so for our listeners, so Allie is the one you've probably heard me talk about it before but Allie is the person who we've started this joke about one of these days I am going to stand on the rooftop and because when she shares these things with me, it just gets, and actually when everyone, the entire community, my Confident Prayer Warrior students, I just want to shout from the rooftops. And I keep telling Allie, one of these days I am going to get on the rooftop and I am going to just get a picture of me shouting from the rooftops, because just to see those aha moments and just to see really that because like you said, recognizing before we go down this spiral, because we're gonna do this. I was just sharing, actually, I just before this recorded a different podcast episode and shared in there just this week that we're recording this. I actually had two kind of meltdowns this week, and afterwards I'm like, oh Lord, why did I respond that way? Like, that is not the way I want to respond, but that's going to happen. We're not always going to respond that way, but being able to, rather than going into these days and days of spiraling, when we learn to recognize it and stop it and say, all right, God, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to come to you. You're going to be the one to give me answers. And Lord, I want to react better next time. And I think it's just so cool. And I always love, in the community, I just always love and appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability, because it's not easy to be vulnerable, but what we found inside the community over and over and over again is, if we're feeling one thing, there are several others that are experiencing the exact same thing. And it just goes back to those unrealistic expectations that we often have surrounding our faith walk. And it isn't easy. It isn't easy at all, but God promises to be with us through it all. And it's funny because when you were talking, it reminded me of, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you. So, as you're hearing this no and getting, understandably upset about it, but God is just saying, now, wait, I've got good plans for you. Hold tight, hang with me a little bit here. And the plans I have for you are good. I need to get a sip of water. But yeah, so I just love everything about this, and so appreciate your testimony and your willingness to share this, because I know this is going to bless so many women, Allie. And I know that, and in fact, I will encourage them to bookmark and save this, because they are going to, like, every one of us is going to hear a no in our life and multiple times in our life. And so just hearing your story and, the things that you can see now and see the good in it and just all that God has done, because you likely wouldn't have been in the community at all. Even that.
Yeah. And I think really the reason I wanted to share this really is not to, it's not at all to be, hey, look at me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's, if I had heard this type of testimony, like when I was in that situation,
Yeah.
it would have been so helpful. It would have been so helpful to hear from someone else, like, this, things happened,
Yeah.
God's answering. And if I'd listened to this story, I would have been right. Okay, it could have made a massive difference.
Yeah.
And so here we are now, like, things are brilliant now, really. I'm not saying my life's fantastic, but
Of course.
our day-to-day struggles and stuff, but
Yeah.
it would be a lot worse. I wouldn't be in the community. That's right. I wouldn't have been doing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to have that the friendship that you and Linda have developed it's just such a beautiful friendship. And it's so cool to see, for us to see you inside the community, just and cheering you on and just praising God for all that he has given you and blessed you with, even in the no, even when he says, no, I've got a different plan. So yeah, really, Good stuff, Allie. Very good stuff. So, Allie, what words of encouragement would you offer? Like, what would be your best advice for someone who right now has been praying for something, they're seeing a no, or they're waiting and still not hearing anything? What would be your best advice for someone?
I think really in that circumstance, it is tough when you really can't see
Mhm.
how anything can play out for the good or for how you want it. And but all you can do really is just wait, just be patient, just
Yeah.
keep praying into that situation, even if you feel like God is being silent.
Mhm.
He's not being silent. He's just working in the background and he hears you and he knows. So you've just got to keep going. What's the
Yeah.
phrase you always say? Be
Be
persistent.
persistent and consistent.
And
Yep.
that I hear you say that a lot, and it is so true. That's all you can do. You won't understand it. You won't even sometimes know what even to pray sometimes, but
Yeah.
for me, I just have to keep going and think, right, I've got another situation now that you're aware of in my family, but
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening there or what's going to happen, but you
Mhm.
just have to keep going. You just
Amen.
have to keep going.
Yeah. May I share another thing that you actually shared with me a while back? And it was one that I told you. I'm going to try not to cry because it was something that really pierced both my husband and I in that moment. And it was something we needed in that moment. May I share that with you? Or may share that with our listeners? I mean, so you said to me, one of the things, and I know I'm not going to say it exactly how you said it, but you said to me, one of the things that you learned is if only you hadn't been, oh gosh, how did you say it? I should have pulled it up. But basically it was, if you, while you were going through that, you wish you would have taken time to enjoy that part of the adventure more, even though, I mean, because you were more focused on your pain. And I don't say that with judgment because this is what we needed to hear. Forgive me because I'm massacring it. I apologize, but it was something along the lines of that, is you wish you would have taken the time to enjoy, like in that pain, in that worry, those fears, you would have enjoyed that time a little bit more with them. And I think it was so profound for both my husband and I in this season and some of the things that we're going through right now. It was just something so profound that, to be perfectly honest with you, like I don't share personal things with my husband. That's, from my community members, that's for my community members. I don't do that. But given it was something that we're going through, and I just repeated that, and even to have my husband literally stop in his track, like stop what he was doing and look at me and say, oh, like we needed to hear that. And then came back to me again later that day and said, what was that? I want to write this down because I need to remember that. But can you speak to that as far as, and maybe I should have asked this just a little bit sooner, or a little bit, yeah, a little bit ago, but can you speak to that a little bit? Is, when you were saying that to me, what you were, yeah, just speaking to that just a little bit.
I think was it when we were all living together and we'd got this we'd got it hanging over us? Is that what it was?
I
I can't
think
remember.
so. Yeah. And yeah, and you,
Yeah,
you knew it was coming.
yeah.
It wasn't
So
going to be, yeah,
I felt like at the time that they were living here that I didn't. I mean, don't get me wrong, we did a lot of things together.
of
I spent a lot
course.
of time with the children. We
Yeah.
have a good relationship, but I had a sadness over me the whole time
Yeah.
because I knew that it was only temporary. It was
Yeah.
only going to be temporary, and I didn't want that time to end.
Yeah.
So it was always like bittersweet, like, oh, we're
Mhm.
doing this. Remember this, don't forget this. And I did a lot of I used to do, well, I called it lockdown news, but because we were a
Mhm.
house of seven, I used to do Facebook lockdown news for
Uh-huh.
friends because there was always something funny going on
Yeah.
and whatnot. And I have them all now come up on my memories on Facebook, and I actually did one of my uni essays on it. I used them, but it underneath all that, I mean, I made them amusing because it was, people were loving it. It was entertaining
Yeah.
apparently. But I underneath all of that, there was this just this sadness that I wish now if I could have just enjoyed it and not worried. If I'd known what was going to happen,
Hmm.
if I'd known, if I was more in tune with God at the time, I would have just enjoyed it. And I didn't enjoy it as much because there was always that cloud hanging over,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. And it really was, Allie, like when you said it, like talk about what's so cool
I can't
is
remember exactly what I said.
I can't remember either, but and it was a while ago. I don't know, maybe a month ago. I don't know. But anyway, but when you said it, and this is the beauty about testimonies, like as you said earlier, this isn't about me, is what you said, right? This is about God and his glory. But when we share those testimonies, then that's what, right, our ultimate calling, to make God known and bring him glory through all of it. And knowing now, like, okay, I did it this way, I wished I wouldn't, and because of this now I can share with others. And that was such a twist at just the day my husband and I needed it, the season that we keep going back to now and saying that is, okay, there is a sadness. Things aren't happening the way we would expect them to, the way we would want them to. There is a deep sadness with it, but we do not want to miss the beauty of
Yeah.
it because of that sadness. And it was just so profound, and it really, really made such a huge difference in our lives. And it just goes back to when, if when you're shining a candle, if you're shining it in the light when everything is good and beautiful and wonderful, you don't see that candle. But if you continue to shine that light, choose to shine that light for Jesus, even or in the darkness, that's when you're going to see the stark contrast. That's when you're going to, and so for you to share that from a time that was just so painful for you is, I mean, and then to change lives and encourage others. And I know that that's what this episode is going to do. It's really going to change lives, and it's going to really help women, some women really just help them see the no a little bit differently, to help them see that there's still hope. There's still hope in a no answer. And so, yeah. Well, Allie, I just can't even thank you enough. I really can't. I appreciate you, my friend. I could not be more grateful to have you in the community. I could not be more grateful that God brought you into my life. And yeah, I stand in awe of him every day. And I just love connecting with you all the time. And yeah, thank you, my friend. I truly appreciate you. And I appreciate you taking the
Thanks.
time today to join us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Allie, take care. Whew. What a great episode. I'll tell you what, I just feel so just so honored and truly grateful to Allie for sharing her testimony with us. And I just love, like I mentioned in the intro, I absolutely love how vulnerable she is, how honest she is about it, about her feelings, because we all experience those feelings: disappointment, anger, frustration. When God says no to something, we think, as we're looking from this small, tiny perspective of ours, we're thinking that it's got to happen this way and in our timing. But God, as Jeremiah 29:11 says, I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, right? Plans for good and not for disaster. Plans that don't cause you harm. I'm massacring this Bible verse, but that are good for you, right? That aren't going to cause you harm. Now, that doesn't mean we're always going to have easy. As Allie explained in this show, this has been anything but easy for her. I've watched her over this last year and a half grow so much. I think it's been a year and a half. Just watched her grow into and really learning how to rely and trust on God. And what I love is that Allie says that, she still struggles, from week to week with different things. Walking close to God doesn't mean you'll never have problems, you'll never have struggles, but it's learning how to lean on God for everything that we need. So I know this episode blessed you. And if you are going through a season right now where you are praying for something and God just has said no, I want you to know I see you, my friend. I want you to know that I get it. I understand how difficult it is. I genuinely do. And here's the thing. Understand, stand on what you know to be true, that He really does have something big planned for you. He really isn't just putting you by the side and not thinking about you again. He's not up there wringing his hands, trying to figure out how this is all going to play out. He's actually doing the work right now, my friend. He is doing the work, and it's going to be beautiful. So hold tight, keep praying, get persistent and consistent in your pursuit of God. Learn to trust in Him. Choose to trust in Him. Remember, trust in God isn't a feeling, it's a choice. And so we have to learn or choose to trust God, even when He says no. So friend, I hope this blessed you today. If you have someone in your life that you know is going through a season right now where they are hearing no and they are just really struggling with this, would you do me a favor? Would you share it with a friend? I would greatly appreciate it. We want to help as many women as possible really just grow closer to God and connect with Him and learn to rely on Him, even in those hard times, even when He says no. And friend, wherever you are listening to the show, be sure to subscribe. Whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast player, be sure to subscribe to the show as well. And then friend, I will meet you back here next week for another episode of A Faithful God podcast.